I'd like to welcome you all to Plain Spoken Grace. I'm sitting here visiting with my friend Nigel Mumford. We've become fast friends here recently. I met Nigel down in Virginia Beach. I heard about a healing ministry that you had at Galilee Church, but I heard more about other things than just your healing ministry. And so I'd like to chat a little bit about it, but let's start about where you're from. Which part of the southern states of America?
Well,
Might we pick up on with that accent?
I was actually from the Bronx.
The Bronx,
From the Bronx, yes.
Yeah.
The north, yes.
Right.
But I am a southern boy.
There you go.
Yes. From the south of England.
South of England.
Yes. I'm from Plymouth, where the Mayflower set sail from. And I wasn't on it. A lot of people think I was, but I wasn't actually. And I didn't have any relatives on it, actually.
No.
But we used to tie up our boat on the Mayflower steps where it actually set sail from. Kind of cool.
That's fun. And you served in the military there?
I did, yes.
7 years?
7 years. I was a section corporal, and then I became a drill instructor. I used to make grown men cry.
Right.
And now I'm a priest, I still make grown men cry. Funny how that works, isn't it? You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I spent a year in combat. Basic training in the Royal Marines is 7 months. Basic training in the US Marines, I think, is 13 weeks. It's a big difference. It was rough. The 55 of us joined and 19 finished the course.
Yeah.
So it's a very high failure rate, but proud to have my Green Beret.
Yeah. And you enjoyed your years?
For the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Combat I didn't enjoy it.
Well, but when you became an instructor...
Oh, yeah, that was fun. Yeah. You mess with people.
Yeah, well...
Well, I mean, my job was to change them from civilians into lean, mean, green fighting machines.
Yes.
I'm not so lean, and definitely not so mean anymore, but that was our job, as a drill instructor, because if they didn't respond to a command, they could be killed.
Right.
And that's the issue of basic training. And that's what broke me when 3 of my recruits were killed.
Yeah.
In a IED. That's at that moment I couldn't speak for a week. And I stuttered for 6 months, had a very bad stutter. Absolutely broken. Blamed myself. And there's nothing, of course, I could have done about it, But realized that I was training people to be killed, and I didn't like that.
No.
So I've seen the dark side. I've seen man's inhumanity to man. But in the healing ministry, I've seen what God can do.
Yeah.
And it is extraordinary. What a privilege it is to watch God at work.
Okay, so let's talk.
Yeah.
You leave the military. How do you end up getting into this ministry?
Well, long story. Read my books.
Yeah.
All 7 of them. No.
And we'll have those listed on.
Good.
We'll have those listed on the site.
Good.
People, yeah.
Advertising moment. No.
Absolutely.
What was the question?
Yeah. How many books have you read? No.
Sorry. 7. No. Did I say 7? No. What was the question?
No.
How did I get into?
How you transition from the military and how you end up in this healing ministry.
Well, I had shell shock, as it was called in those days. So I was hospitalized for a little while. Then I did a very easy job making furniture for a while, hated it. Then I rented antiques at an antique shop, and that was great fun because we did movies like The Elephant Man and The French Lieutenant's Woman and stuff. It was fascinating, it really was.
Yeah.
Then I came to America, and then my sister Julie got sick. She was a ballerina, and she had issues with her left knee, to the point where it was clicking and then it froze, and she couldn't bend the leg. She had arthroscopic surgery in the knee to release it, and it never did, and she was in a lot of pain. And then the knee started to curl up, so she couldn't walk, let alone dance. And after 6 months of the doctor saying, there's nothing wrong with you, go home to your kids, they were saying it's a psychological affect. They didn't diagnose the right disease. It was called dystonia. Dystonia, you can get it in the neck where your head is twisted around like this, or you can have it in the spine and it just curls you up. In my sister's case, she had generalized dystonia, which is the whole body was crippled and curled up, and 8 to 10 times a day she would reverse with such violence the diagnosis was death by breaking her own neck. It was pretty serious. She went down to 65 pounds. There was a moment when I was with her that I actually had my hand out to close her windpipe because I thought she wanted me to kill her. She was in so much pain.
Right.
I thank God I didn't do that. I'd be a murderer.
Yeah.
She'd be dead and I'd be in jail.
Right.
Now, this is where God gets interesting because the next day, this man, Canon Jim Glennon from Australia, came to pray for Julie. He took on, as he said, to believe for her healing, and she was healed instantly. She got out of bed and hopped to the window, and 3 months later, she was completely cured. The weird thing was, though, that she kept, her whole body was healed except her left fist.
Yeah.
So nobody knew that because she could shake hands, and everything like that. But when her husband went to take a hand, he'd get this, get a fist. And a lot of healing is to do with unforgiveness. It's a big block to healing. But in her case, she was praying, Lord, help me to forgive. Help me, help me. Boom, and a hand flew open. And that was the end of the dystonia. Absolutely amazing. I mean, and the newspapers actually said miracle healing of a ballerina.
Yes.
So that's my introduction to the healing ministry. But Chip, a year later, I had a picture frame shop, which was kind of inert and gentle and no stress.
Yeah.
Except for the people who came in,
Right,
except for the people.
Yeah.
And glass, you tend to cut yourself rather a lot, you know. It was a year after my sister was healed that somebody came in my frame shop who actually looked green. She looked very sick. And I said, are you okay? She said, no, I've got a really bad headache. And I'm not kidding. I was standing in front of her and I watched my hands do this. And it was as if somebody quietly just got hold of my wrists and my hands were like this. And I put it on her head. And she said, what did you do? The pain is gone. And I knew that I hadn't done anything, but I knew God had.
Right.
And that's how it started, that moment when, and you know, some women would have sued me. You know, it was inappropriate. You don't go around plonking your hands on people. But it was just in slow motion, just looking at her, aware of what was going on, but not putting my hands on her head. And then that honest look, what did you do? The pain is gone. And at that moment, I knew God had done a mighty work in her life. And quite frankly, it scared me. I was very frightened. I knew about the healing ministry. I knew my sister had been healed.
Yes.
And at that moment, my life changed in a blink of an eye. Not something I was looking for.
Right.
At all, you know. This is God's plan, clearly. And it's very humbling.
Yes.
That was 31 years ago now.
Yeah.
That happened.
Yeah. So you're overseas at this point.
Yes.
When and how do you come to the United States?
Well, I came twice with the Royal Marines.
Okay.
The second time with Prince Charles, as a matter of fact.
Right.
A lot of fun. He was my helicopter pilot. And I sent him a copy of one of my 7 books. Did I say? Sorry.
Yeah.
You've got to stop that. Sorry. Subliminal advertising. So I was very impressed with this country when I came over. And my first wife was an American. She was a ballerina. But she didn't really know God. And things kind of went south. But I stayed here because I knew God wanted me to be here. And as I said, after that moment of putting my hands on that woman's head, people started showing up in my frame shop. And more people were coming for healing than they were for framing. And my 8 employees were getting very upset because more people were coming in for healing. Until one of them hurt his back and we prayed for him and his back was healed immediately. I mean, it's all very humbling. I mean, I'm just very humbled to be put into this position where God gets us our attention in a way that was not my plan at all.
Right.
You know, I didn't plan on this. But he did.
There is a plan for our lives.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you.
Right.
Plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you a future. Although I have been harmed many times, 13 times nearly died.
Right. And so I know you're in Connecticut.
Yes. Yes.
Now you're in Virginia Beach.
Yes.
Tell me about being called down to Galilee.
Via New York. So we were in Connecticut for several years and I had a healing center there. I was headhunted to Albany, the Diocese of Albany, as a layperson and was ordained at the Albany Diocese to look after the entire diocese for healing. And then it became very clear that God was moving us to Virginia Beach because of the military. We have a program called the Welcome Home Initiative. Yeah. And we were doing a lot of work with military. In fact, we've put over 1,000 combat vets and their spouses through this program. It's been very effective, setting the captives free from the trauma of the haunting memories. These men and women are haunted by what they had to do and what they've seen in trauma. So one of the books actually is on that subject. Right. After the trauma, the battle begins, the battle for sanity, the battle of trying to get away from those vile, haunting memories of man's inhumanity to man. It's very sad. Sure. But God heals. God sets the captives free. And I always think of Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times. And then Jesus dies. And I can't imagine what Peter must have felt like. Absolutely broken. Broken. 3 times he denied him. But then they go out fishing, you know, and they didn't catch anything. They go back to their old job. Jesus died and they go back to their old job. There's no fish. They must have felt really bad. And there's this guy on the beach saying, you know, put your net on the other side. What do you know about fishing? Yeah, right. They didn't know it was Jesus. you know. So they throw over the net and catch 150th or 50th, I think it is, fish. You know, and then he invites them for breakfast. How did he get a fish? He's got a fire going, you know.
He does, right?
Beautiful story.
Yeah.
And then he takes Peter aside, and he tells him 3 times, "Do you love me?" And Peter doesn't get that. But for me, that's how healing works, because Peter wasn't aware of what was going on. And he was getting more angry the 3 times he got it, rather than understanding what he was trying to say. He got angrier and angrier.
That's absolutely beautiful. Elaborate on that.
Yeah.
That's what healing is about. You and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
Loving.
Yes. Listening, loving, and praying.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah.
We listen. And to listen, you know, if I was talking to you and I was doing this and you were talking to me, I'm not listening. You know, This is how I listen. Like this. I put my hand over my mouth to stop me from speaking. That's what I do, to really listen and pay attention, square off, and really listen to what you're saying, to what you're not saying, but more important, to what God is saying. To try and understand, find the target.
So you were telling me about that one time.
Yeah.
We were talking, and we talked about, you know, being in the Spirit.
Yes.
To discern what's going on, or try to learn what's going on. And you looked across the table and said, "I've been in the Spirit while we've been talking. I'm listening and paying attention now." And I thought, well, isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
So, how do you get yourself into the Spirit? How do you get to the point where you listen?
Yeah.
How do you get to the point where you are? I said this before. The story in Acts about Peter and James going to into the temple and looking at that, just locking eyes with that guy, and gold or silver have I?
Silver and gold have I none, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But what I have is far more.
Exactly right.
And that's exactly what the ministry is
Jesus Christ of Nazareth.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And guess what? He's still in the business of healing.
He is.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
Okay. So talk a little bit to people who maybe don't understand being in the Spirit, or getting into the Spirit, or listening.
Yeah. Well,
as you're listening and loving and praying.
So you listen, love, and pray. What they're saying, what they're not saying, and what God is saying, and to try and be in the Spirit. The beautiful thing about that is often, you know, God gets our attention in many ways. He really does. But when I'm working with somebody, something happens in that communication of finding something to love. The Holy Spirit comes and communicates. And often I get a word of knowledge. And when that happens, it's extraordinary, particularly when you're talking to 500 or 1,000 people and you know somebody's got a problem and you pick them out. I've had some remarkable gifts watching God at work in that, where a word of knowledge is given, and it's 100% where that person would be healed. Got an example, if you like.
Of course I'd like.
Yeah. I was talking at a church after the church service, and as I was speaking, I had this vision of somebody with a bad shoulder, and nobody would fess up. I knew it was the right shoulder, and I kept asking. And as I was praying and talking, I knew which quadrant this person was in, so I was zeroing in, and I knew it was a woman. And eventually, after what seemed like an age, the woman put up a hand. And as she came forward, Chip, I knew not to press. I knew there was something wrong. I knew there was an issue that the public didn't need to know. I found out later it was a domestic abuse. So obviously she didn't want to say what was wrong, but I knew it in the Spirit. I knew. But the Lord picked her up. We brought her forward. And when this happens, it's always 100%. And her shoulder wasn't healed, which really surprised me. It always is 100%. Fast forward 3 days. So Wednesday, Sunday, this happened. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
Wednesday, I'm giving a talk at the local hospital, and there's a pastor who was going up, who at the last minute decided he was going to speak first. And he asked everybody to introduce themselves. So about 60 people there, brain surgeons, heart surgeons. I'm sitting there thinking, what? I've got to talk to these people? What? You know, who the heck am I? You know, I was terrified. I really was.
Right.
And I got to tell you, I got up, and for the first time, I grabbed hold of the podium and I couldn't speak. I was locked. And a woman said, "Do you remember me?" I said, "No," because I was so traumatized.
Sure.
She said, "I'm the woman with the bad shoulder." She said, "After Sunday, I went home, we had dinner, I did the washing up, and I forgave somebody. We know who that is. I forgave that person. And as soon as she forgave him, the shoulder went click, and she was healed."
Yeah.
And I'm standing there saying, "Thank you, Jesus."
Yes.
You know? And then another person said, "You prayed for me 3 years ago. I had breast cancer. It's gone. I've been healed." And all these people, and that's how God works. in supporting us and lifting us up.
Right.
And as of that moment, I could speak.
Right.
Because the power of the presence of Christ was there in an awesome way.
And those are examples where you know, because there are also times when we don't know.
That's right. That's right. I spoke with John Hopkins years ago, Native American this side, a rabbi this side, there's an imam, and we're all talking about different forms and modalities of healing. I was the Christian.
Yes.
And after my talk, it was extraordinary. About a dozen men and women stood up at an angle to attention, facing forward like this. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "We thought we'd play mirrors." And the first guy said, I'm a heart surgeon. And he put his hands forward and he said, "Would you anoint my hands? I do heart surgery, I do heart transplants, and I want my hands to be anointed." And every one of those people asked to have and I tell you what, at the end of the line, I was in tears.
Yeah.
I was so moved.
Right.
It was so humbling.
Right.
For these men and women who have people's lives in their hands literally opened up, and they wanted their hands to be anointed. How beautiful is that?
There are times when you spend time with somebody. I was fortunate enough to come to one of your healing services and was on a prayer team. There was a lady that came up and she wanted prayer for her anxiety. And I just felt we've got to go deeper with her. We've got to go deeper with her. I think she identifies as someone who has anxiety. That's the way she would explain herself probably to most folks.
Yeah.
And you've got to break that. So sometimes what you think you're dealing with on the surface is not really the holdup or the issue, correct?
Very much so.
Yeah.
The person might, I always start with 6 words: how may I pray for you? That's it. Everybody, how may I pray for you? And they'll tell me, and what I need to know is what the target is. I'm a Marine, I need to know the target. I want to zero in on the nuclei of the cancer.
Correct.
I want to zero in into the place of the brain of negative thinking. And often the person will say something which isn't the actual target, but we'll get there in the end, And that's the fascinating thing about the ministry of Christ present today,
Right.
I've prayed, Chip, for years, for 31 years, that my hands would be his hands, that I might be an ambassador of Jesus Christ, that his power working through me would heal people, in all humility, of course. It's very humbling.
Right. And how do you not get yourself in front of that?
Well,
you got somebody that comes up out of a crowd and they can make you,
it's embarrassing.
If you're not careful, you're a little full of yourself.
It's embarrassing. So God has ripped the carpet out of me several times when I start getting, and my wife is very good. She'll bring me down to level.
That's good.
Very quickly.
That's good.
But I was very excited once I was going to speak at St. Paul's Darien, a church that had a great revival, great stuff was going on there. The Holy Spirit was moving powerfully. And I was so excited to go and speak there. And I got up after I was introduced, and I was ready to go, and I dropped my sermon. And the pages went in slow motion like this, all over the place.
Yeah.
And at that point, I didn't know about numbering the pages.
Yes.
And I'm on the floor picking up the paper thinking, okay, God, thank you. You just totally humbled me. And it's in those moments that you know that it's not me. Just as the woman said, what did you do? I know I didn't do anything. And right from this, I'm so glad that's how I was called to this ministry, because it's a baseline. I know it's not me. I've had people try and, corner me. And I said, but what are you doing? Back off.
Yeah.
Sit down. It's not me, it's God. And I keep reminding them that it's God. And the thing is, we've got to say thank you. I was just reading Psalm 100 in the Message.
Yes.
I love to read, King James, English Standard New Living, and the Message. There's a line in the Message that says, enter with the password, thank you. Make yourselves at home, talking praise, thank him, worshiping him.
Coming through the gates with thanksgiving.
Absolutely. And we've forgotten how to say thank you. People don't say thank you.
Very true.
I've been on many missions where Friday, Saturday, Sunday I've preached, I've poured out my heart, and I'll wait a week or two and get no phone call from the place I've been. So I call them up and say, thank you for inviting me. Do you know what they say?
Huh.
You're welcome. Yes. What? What? I don't understand it. We've forgotten how to say thank you. If we're not saying thank you to each other, surely we're not saying thank you to God.
That's true.
And we must say
the story of the 10 lepers.
Absolutely.
Man, one goes back. Where are the other 9?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were all healed, but only one was cured.
That's right.
Yeah. I love to tell the story of the 10 leopards, but that's another story.
Yeah.
But how true that is. Weren't there 10? Well, but this foreigner comes back this foreigner. I love that because I'm a foreigner.
Yeah.
Well, I'm an American now, but
Yeah.
you know, it's humbling, it's exciting, it's amazing. And every person who's healed, I'm still got this excitement as if wow, it still amazes me to watch God heal and cure. People always ask me, you know, what's the difference between healing and curing? I totally believe everybody's healed. I have no doubt about that, but not everybody's cured. And that's the mystery. I know when I get to the pearly gates, I'm going to have my hands on my head.
Yeah.
Hey, Peter, what the heck? You know,
Yeah.
the second time I've already been there before,
Yeah.
but that's another story. You know, so, you know, again, my main point is something always happens when we pray. It may not be the target. It may be a periphery. We may pray for somebody and they die, but that's the ultimate healing. I think of a woman I met. In fact, the first person I prayed for formally, a friend of mine, Bob Godley, what a great name. He had to be a priest.
Yeah, right.
Godley, you know.
Yeah.
He called me up out of the blue and said, would I come with him to Montefiore Hospital in New York City to meet a woman who was dying. She had jaundice, metastasized breast cancer. She had 3 lumps on her head. She was very sick.
Yeah.
When I walked in the room, I could see the fear and the worry in her. I stood one side of the bed and Bob stood the other. And I shut my eyes. You know, I laid my hands on her and had my eyes tight shut. And there was this silence. And I confess I did one of these things, you know. And I thought you had to have your eyes shut to pray. You know, and I looked at Bob.
Yeah.
And Bob said, I'd like you to pray. And I'd never done it formally, let alone in a hospital.
Right.
And then the words came, you know. And the beauty of that was that she wasn't cured, she did die. But after we prayed, the jaundice had gone, the redness in her eyes had gone, she was a normal color. And her young husband and young kids were not angry anymore that Mum was dying. The anger had left, and she was allowed to die in peace. You know, I've seen some extraordinary deaths. You know, death again is the ultimate healing. I've seen death in combat, which is extraordinary, horrific. But I've seen some beautiful deaths. I think one of the most beautiful ones was just before COVID. I was invited by a chap my age to come and pray for his dad. They turned off his pacemaker.
Yes.
He had Alzheimer's. He hadn't spoken in 6 weeks. He was in the fetal position.
Yeah.
I was leaning over him against the wall in the hospice place, and I did last rites. And when I finished last rites, he was like this. And he opened one eye and he looked around and he looked at me. And he said, thank you. He hadn't spoken for 6 weeks. He said, thank you. I went, oh, beautiful, beautiful death.
Right.
And I'm standing over him with water pouring out of my eyes. I've wept many times. Don't know about you, but the older I get, the more I cry.
It's the truth.
It's turning into a big wimp, you know.
It's the truth.
Tears
Yeah.
pouring down my. I mean, there was a stream of water coming out of my face over this man's face. But what an honor, what a beauty to be there at that time. You know.
You have a situation like that, and the evening's over, and you get in your car and you go home.
Well, you get in your car and weep.
Okay.
Done that many times.
Yeah.
Many times.
And decompress, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not good driving with tears in your eyes.
No.
I used to be a bagpiper. You try and play the bagpipes when you're crying.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
wow.
impossible. You can't do it.
Wow.
That's another story.
You also played a violin.
I do. Yeah.
You do?
Yeah,
How long
I
have you
do.
been playing a violin?
Since I was 7.
No kidding.
Yes. And now I'm 14. No.
Yeah. How frequently do you pick it up and play?
Not enough.
Yeah.
Not enough. I have a CD out that I didn't bring with me, but I've
Yeah.
actually got a CD of
Of you playing the violin?
12 tunes, as it were, that were recorded in healing services live.
Yeah.
With no rehearsal at all.
Yeah.
We just play.
Yeah.
We know how loud, how quiet, and the pianist and I, we play in the spirit. We know we can pray in the spirit.
Yeah.
We were actually playing in the spirit.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
That's fun.
Mm.
That's fun. All right. When you started healing, you're not involved. Fair point. I apologize.
That's all right.
When it started in your life,
Yes,
when
yes.
it started manifesting
When
itself.
God got my attention.
When God
Yeah.
got your attention.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
You're not involved with the church. You're not formally trained.
Nominally involved. I went Sundays.
Yeah, I understand
But
that.
not
But you
formally
weren't in
trained.
leadership. You
Oh,
didn't.
no.
So you didn't have a degree. You didn't have a degree. You didn't have a
Nothing.
right. How is it different? I mean, one of the things that fascinates me so much about the disciples is the way they just were going out.
That's right.
And
silver and gold have I none. They just went out and did it.
They just out and did it.
Yes. I didn't need to be ordained. But because of the job that I was in Albany, they wanted me to be ordained.
Okay. And
I've got to tell you, it took me 15 years. I knew God was going to ordain me, but I had 15 years of rejection and then 3 years of the wilderness. And I was headhunted literally to go to this. Actually, I was headhunted to 4 places on the same afternoon within 2 hours. It was extraordinary. I'd been at this healing center for 10 years. And out of the blue, one afternoon, 4 job offers. And I knew God was moving us along.
So you had some time in the wilderness before you...
Oh, yeah. I had massive wilderness times. Yeah. So anyway, I'm having this interview to see whether I was going to be this lay leader of the healing ministry in the diocese. And it was. I'm kind of boasting, but I'm boasting in the Lord.
There you go.
I need to make that very clear. But when I left, I was like, I think I've got the job. I think it's okay. Because actually, they didn't ask me any questions at all. I was doing the questioning. So they offered me the position. And then the layperson who was there with the bishops called me up the next day and said, I need to tell you what they said when you walked out. And at that point, I'd given up. I said, God, if you want me to be a priest, you're going to have to do this. In fact, actually, I wasn't even going for the priesthoodship. I was going for the diaconate, because deacons work with the poor, the weak, the sick, and the lonely.
Yeah.
It's the description of the healing ministry. But they called me the next day, and he said, I need to tell you what the bishop said when you walked out. They both turned to each other and said, you should be a priest. I'm a priest.
Huh.
Miracle. Absolute miracle. 17 years it took.
Wow.
Perseverance.
Right.
Very humbling. And then, Galilee, it's a big church.
Yeah, so tell us about Galilee. I'm familiar with it because I'm from Virginia Beach, and we've had 4 generations of families attending the church. Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So
didn't realize that.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Big church, about 700, I guess. Something like that. I'm one of 4 staff. I'm an associate pastor.
Yeah.
Father Andy's the Le Grand Fromage. He's Father Andy. We have another English bloke who is a great guy, Ben.
Yeah.
They're both, I like to call them, they're theologians. See, I'm not a theologian. I'm a heartologian.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah.
I live and move and have my being here, knowing a little bit about the Bible and knowing, quite frankly, for 31 years, I've learned from the trenches. I've learned from talking to people. How I pray for you and listening, loving and praying, understanding the disease or the dis-ease in the person, and then carrying it on to the next person. That's what I've learned. As far as I know, there's no college course or college degree to do this.
Even necessary.
Right, exactly, yes.
I mean, that's part of the beauty of it.
Absolutely, yeah. I've learned a lot.
Are more people being drawn to healing ministry these days?
Good question. I'm seeing younger people, yes, which is very exciting because when I look at my mentors, I've been in this 30 years, so, I'm 67 now, so I was a lot younger. But I had 2 mentors. One was Canon Jim Glennon, and another chap called Francis McNutt. Great people, great anchors of the healing ministry. And I would call Jim Glennon in Australia once a month to find out more, to glean more. And I read as much as I could of their books. In fact, there's a book by Francis McNutt called Healing, which is a wonderful book. A really good book. If you're interested in learning more about the healing ministry, I'd highly recommend that.
Yeah, I've got a copy.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Good book.
Yeah, you recommended it.
Absolutely. Good.
Yeah.
It's real. This is not a dress rehearsal. Something always happens when we pray. And again, it might not be the healing of the cancer, as it was in this case with this woman who died, but the healing that took place was the fact that her children allowed her to die without anger, and she had a perfect death. Death is the enemy, of course, but it's part of the healing ministry.
Are there times when you feel discouraged?
To be honest, well,
I mean, you've got to be.
Yes.
It has to have been a time you prayed for someone.
Well, I get discouraged. When
I'll use this as an example, and it's happened to me.
Yeah.
I heard about a young baby in intensive care. I don't know the family. I go to the hospital. I'm outside. I'm praying for healing for this little child. Nobody knows I'm there. I mean, I haven't even shared this until right now. And then I find out a day or 2 later, died. It tore me up.
Yeah.
It absolutely tore me up.
Yeah.
And again, nobody knew I was there, so I surely wasn't doing it for me. It was just like, Lord, I obviously I don't understand.
Yeah. And nor do I.
Right.
I've been doing this for 31 years.
Yeah, sure.
It's a mystery.
Right.
When it comes to babies and children, it's heartbreaking. It really is.
Tears you up.
It really does.
Yeah.
That's when I have a good weep. Years ago, I was with a Polish couple who didn't speak much English. They were Catholic. And they were at Yale, New Haven. The baby was on a respirator. And I was there when they turned the respirator off. And that was a real tearjerker, to say the least. And the mother thought she had killed the baby, suffocated the baby at the breast, because she died while she was breastfeeding. And she thought she'd suffocated the kid. So she was just mortified. She thought she'd murdered her own kid. She was mortified, But a few days later, I got a phone call in broken English saying, would I come to the funeral? I said, yes, of course. So I got there. Luckily, that morning, I'd been interviewed on the radio, so I was wearing a jacket and tie. And I'm sitting at the back, and she comes up to me and said, we're ready to begin. I said, what do you mean? This is way before I was ordained. We're ready to begin. What do you mean? I said, well, you're doing the funeral. It's like, what?
Yeah.
I had 3 minutes.
Right.
Morning to do a funeral. So I got up and said my favorite prayer, which I'll teach you. Are you ready for my favorite prayer?
Absolutely.
Yes. Help.
Yeah.
Well, so easy. Help.
Yeah.
Don't forget that. So I said my favorite prayer, found an the old prayer book, which is full of thous and these and therefore,
Yeah, sure.
And I've got a slight lisp. Try saying Thessalonians when you got a lisp. It's not fair. So anyway, I found this book, the prayer book, and I went and started the service. I hadn't got a clue what I was doing. Not a clue.
Sure.
To the point where I put the prayer book down and just went with the Spirit, and that's it. When you allow God to speak through.
Isn't it amazing how that...
Yes.
Yes.
Fascinating.
There have been times...
Yes.
I remember once, I took all the kids... This is when I was with the youth group. It was about, 15 or 20 kids.
Yeah.
We did a missions trip. We go up to Massachusetts, and we were doing a vacation Bible school for a little small Baptist church up in the Northeast. So the Baptist churches up there generally are small. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So us Southern Baptists roll up there with our casseroles and fried chicken, and and we set up shop. But we had a gathering when we got together at the end, and I was doing gag gifts, funny stuff for all the kids, And there's this one young man, and I could not think of a thing to say about him other than, you're the most likely person in this group to get into the ministry.
Wow.
And
you had
he
a word
is.
of knowledge. He is a minister.
He is.
Praise the Lord. You had a word of knowledge.
I didn't see it coming. It's not like somebody said, you need to say this.
Right. Did you?
But I felt like I couldn't not say it.
Right. So did you hear yourself saying it without thinking it? Did it just come out?
Well, no. I kept thinking, I'm supposed to say this, and then I'm like, no, we're doing this for fun, and I got to find something funny, and I couldn't, and so it's like I got to the end, and I said, I have no choice, but I want to share this with everybody.
Yes.
That you're the most, Anyway, it's a
beautiful
thing,
isn't it? But what did that do for you and your faith?
Well, I knew it wasn't me.
Exactly.
Right.
That's the key.
I knew it wasn't me.
Yeah.
And so the times when it does happen,
it's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
It's like you have a soul in your hand just for a little while. That's how I look at this when we're praying for somebody. Yeah. Just got this soul in my hand, or Christ's hands, of course. But just for a moment, we have that intimacy, that deep intimacy of understanding. Yeah. Talking of youth, I was giving a talk to about 20 or 30 kids one summer camp, and a bee came, a wasp, a yellow jacket was bothering me. And it was in my face. I didn't, So I thought of Genesis, that we had to have dominion over the animals.
Yeah. I
said, in the name of Jesus Christ, go away. The bee went, in the way I pointed, it just took off the way, and all the kids were like, what? What? That was awesome. And I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus. It was an awesome moment of absolute faith. But 5 minutes later, there was a cute little chubby girl who was sitting there. Another bee came and bothered her. And I said, you know what to do. She did it, and it went.
No kidding.
Yes.
That's great.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And another youth one. Oh, gosh. So I was giving a talk on healing to some, I don't know how old they were, teenagers, youngish teenagers. And one of them, I just started the talk, and one of the kids went, at this. And I laughed. And one of the directors said, well, actually, she has a condition. She's been hiccuping uncontrollably for 5 years.
Yeah.
And she hiccups in theatre, out at school. It's embarrassing. I was really embarrassed because I thought,
yeah, sure.
I thought someone was messing with me.
Right.
So, ye of little faith. So I thought, okay, here I am talking about Jesus and healing. We need to pray for healing. Okay. So the ye of little faith comes in because I had a second string to my fiddle. I'm thinking, okay, if we pray for her and she hiccups during the rest of my talk, I'm going to talk about Jesus praying for the guy with eyesight.
Yeah.
Jesus prayed twice.
Right.
And he says, how you doing? Can you see anything? I see trees as men walking. Lovely story. And I was going to tell that story. So I had a second string to my violin, my fiddle. If she hiccuped again, I'd say, right, we're going to pray again. But you know what she didn't? We prayed. I picked 2 people out. We prayed for no hiccuping at all. None. 3 months later, her mum called me up. No hiccups, cured. A year later, at the annual conference that we were at, all these teenagers came up to me and said, do you remember what happened? I said, yes, I sure do.
Yeah.
And that kept happening all the years I was in Albany. Every year they'd remind me. Yeah. If I saw somebody in a mall or something, they'd come up and say, do you remember that? I said, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And her hiccups were ceased and desist right at that moment. I think what we tend to do is limit God. We can't limit God.
Right.
We put him in a box.
It's hard to understand.
Yes.
The strength of his.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're talking about someone that spoke creation into existence.
Absolutely.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm with you though.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I get it.
Yeah. So, the Bible says, let me decrease that he may increase. I think it's in Matthew somewhere. And it's so important to think that way.
Yeah.
To know it's him.
Yeah.
And to defer and refer to him constantly. And then again, of course, to say thank you.
Yeah.
But if there's nothing else, in this conversation, something always happens when we pray. And I think we need to shove that in and know that, because we all have little faith. I got to tell you. So I would preach all the time, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. I'd say that all the time.
All the time, right.
Until I was sick. Until I had the swine flu in 2009. Until I had sepsis, MRSA, 100% oxygen, total organ failure, a trach, both lungs punctured, a wicked bed sore. I know pain.
Yeah.
I tell you, if you want to have pain, a bed sore is the worst thing you could possibly have. Okay. So a few weeks after rehab, 3 months in ICU, a month or 2 in rehab, 6 weeks in rehab, first sermon in a wheelchair. And I'm doing, probably 4 or 5 words per breath because my lungs were so damaged. I said in my sermon 3 or 4 times, Lord, I believe. And I didn't say, help my unbelief. Once.
There you go.
Didn't say once.
Right.
And after the sermon, several people came up to me and said, Father Nigel, you didn't say help my unbelief. And I didn't realize it. And then I thought about it and thought, I don't have any unbelief now.
Yeah.
I've seen God heal other people, but he's cured me.
Yeah.
I was with a doctor. My physician was a MASH doctor in Vietnam. He had dealt with hundreds of veterans, seriously damaged Vietnam vets. He said to me, I've never seen anybody so close to death as you and survive.
Right.
But on the flip side, I've got to tell you, after I came out of the coma, I had no idea who I was, where I was, and people were coming. It was not a great experience. But when they gathered around my body, around my body, they were checking out my brain, how my brain function was. And I said, Doctor, he said, yes. I said, will I ever be able to play the piano again? He said, absolutely. And I said, well, that was funny. I couldn't play it before I was sick.
There you go.
And I knew that I was fine. And
my
wife and all these people were standing around just because I was the first case in upstate New York with swine flu, and they wanted to know what had happened.
Right.
And all these physicians actually would come and sit with me and talk with me and wanted to know what it was like.
Yeah.
And even what heaven was like, because I went several times.
Yes. Mm. You want to talk about that?
Sure. I wrote a book about it.
There you go.
One of the 7 books. Yes, I wrote a book called Dying to Live, How Near-Death Experiences Increase Our Faith. I wrote it really for myself because it's very cathartic to process. And it was very helpful in that process of trying to understand what I'd been through and to retell the story. And the most significant part of retelling, and I'll tell you what happened, but the most significant part was the trach. One of the visions I had was the male nurses, I didn't like male nurses for some reason.
Interesting.
I really didn't
Yeah,
keep
okay.
away. But anyway, there were two male nurses who threw me from the gurney onto the killing table. And one of them had his knee in my throat and was pushing down. It was 10 o'clock. My funeral was at 11. I saw my coffin. I heard clinking of glasses. And I knew that was it. I knew that was the end of it, you know. So it wasn't until I started writing the book and recalling that memory. I asked my wife, I said, what time did they do the trach? She said, 10 o'clock. So I was aware of the pressure and the fear and the worry of having a throat slit. I was aware of that.
Yeah.
So I wasn't actually being killed. I wasn't being put out of my misery. I was actually given an opportunity to breathe.
Sure.
But I got to tell you, the first memory I have of the visions was actually, and this sounds a bit kooky, but it's based on Paul, who said, I know a person who's been caught up into the third heaven, or was it the seventh heaven? I forget. It's the premise of my book anyway, either the third or the seventh.
Yeah, yeah.
I know somebody who was talking about himself, of course, when he was stoned.
Yeah.
Because he was very close to death.
Right.
And he also had a near-death experience.
Right.
So that's what it's based on. It sounds kooky, but it's true. You know, I know what I saw. I know my body lifted up. I know I left my body and went through the ceiling into the sky.
Right.
I was looking at the darkness and tried to turn back to say goodbye, and I couldn't. I wasn't, and it was okay. It was all right. Fine. It's fine. It was lovely, actually.
Yeah.
Very, very peaceful.
Yeah.
And then I saw this bar about a mile long and 6 miles high.
How did you know it was a mile long and 6 miles high?
Well, that's what it felt like.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
That's what it looked like.
Sure.
From where I was. I mean, I couldn't tell how close I was. It was in all. Let's just put it this way: it was huge.
Yeah.
But that's what I guessed it. You know, 15 cubits by 300.
Right.
That's what it felt like.
Right.
Thank you for asking me that.
Yeah.
Nobody's actually challenged me on that one, but thank you for that, because it makes me think. I've always said that. I don't know why I said that.
Yeah.
Because that's what it seemed like. It was. Let's put it this way: it was huge. Okay. So I'm looking at the stars. And then I'm looking at this mile 6, you know, and realized it was in the shape of a book. And the stars there were converging on this one page, thousands of little white dots. And I looked at each white dot, and I looked under the dot, expecting to see the bibliography of the person. I knew I was looking at the book of life.
Right.
I knew it. And then the page turned, and it turned from the bottom, and I felt the wind. Felt this wind going by, and there was another page. It was like I was being introduced to the entire company of heaven. It was extraordinary. Like I knew everybody. It was like God was introducing me to all the souls who've gone before.
Right.
Beautiful. Then I had a vision of a blade of grass that I looked at. It was green, vivid green. The colors were amazing. That's why I know it was the difference between a vision and a dream. I saw 3 steps. I saw 3 tulips representing, obviously, they were white tulips representing the Trinity. And then I saw my house, and it wasn't built like a regular house. It was built in a triangle shape, and living water was running through. There was no kitchen, and you just put a gold chalice into the water and drank it, and that was your food. It was if you wanted a steak and chips, that's what it was. Bacon and eggs, you know, that's what it was. Great.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I know it sounds kooky, but that's what I experienced. But I also saw many mansions, colorful houses. I didn't see anybody, but I did see Christ when I was going through the valley of the shadow of death. And during that moment, I had a vision of hell, and it was horrific, a complete mockery of heaven. And then around the corner, as I was crawling, somehow I knew I was paralyzed, which I was. I came around the corner, and there was heaven. My goodness me. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful, golden, just radiant. I mean, I can sense it now. It was lovely. So I have no fear of death.
Yes.
Pain, you know, have a trach and a bed sore.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I felt like Lazarus, to be honest.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah.
I wish he'd written a book. Would that be neat? Wouldn't imagine
All
what
right,
he would have written about. Yeah.
This is interesting, but I'm gonna jump a little bit and ask a question. Somebody who feels drawn to the healing ministry, feels like maybe they can be a part of the healing ministry. What do they do? How do they do it? What do they not do? How do you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
By the fruits you are known. So the first thing I would say is read 1 Corinthians 12, which lists the gifts.
Yes.
Okay? And look at all the gifts. I think there are 8 or 9 of them, if I remember rightly. And really look at them and try and understand if one of those gifts is for you. But at the end of that, the segue between 1 Corinthians 12 and 1 Corinthians 13, which is love is patient, love is kind, love never fails. There's a segue between the two, which is 1 Corinthians 12:31, that says, seek ye then the greater gifts.
Right.
It's like a secret, a big secret. There it is. 1 Corinthians 12:31. There it is, right there. Seek ye then the greater gifts. So we're supposed to be seeking the greater gifts. God has given us all a gift.
Yeah.
Of something, to be kind, to be generous, to be fruitful,
So somebody that's listening,
Yes.
wants to be a part of this,
Yes.
feels drawn to it.
Read that.
What do you say to them?
Read that first.
Okay.
Read that and think about it. If you're still pray about it like crazy.
Yeah.
Lord, are you calling me to this ministry?
Yes.
Read as much as you can and educate yourself.
Yes.
And then be aware of your surroundings. Let me give you an example. Perhaps you're in line for the checkout at the supermarket.
Yes.
How are you? How are you, Mrs. Smith? Actually, I'm having surgery next week. So I'll pray for you. No. Stop and pray. Lay hands on her and pray. Can I just hold hands with you? You don't need to smack her on the head and push her on the floor.
Yeah.
Just put your arm around her and pray. That's how you do this. It's very gentle. And if somebody doesn't want that and they say no, thank you, you respect that and pray for them anyway.
That's correct. Yeah.
And what I find amazing with this ministry is it's not just Christians. I've had many Jews, not too many of other non-Christians, but I've had many Jews and several who've converted because they know Jesus, Yeshua, they know the healer.
Right.
And that's incredible. Very humbling.
Listen, love, pray.
Pray. That's it. Once I worked with a lady who was very caustic. She had actually told me something so horrific I threw up in my mouth. I'm a Marine. I've been around the block.
Yeah.
I had to rush off. And I stood in the corridor and I said, I don't want to go back in there. She's not nice. I don't like it. And God said, go back in and find something to love about her. It's amazing. So I went back in and I prayed like crazy. And you know what? I found something to love. She was miraculously healed, by the way.
Right.
But she was not a nice person, But God did a mighty work in her.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Listen, love,
And pray.
pray.
And this is not a dress rehearsal.
It's very simple.
Something
We can
always
do that
happens.
at any moment, at any time, in any place, any day.
Absolutely.
And if we're listening
Mm.
to the Spirit, sometimes we just can't help but to do it.
That's right. If somebody says no, don't worry about it. Jesus was rejected.
Right.
The healing ministry's had a really bad rap when you think about it,
Yeah.
right from the start. Why did they crucify Jesus? Because he healed on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
And then some TV stuff kind of puts people
Yeah, I
off,
understand.
smacking people on the
Yeah,
head
I
and pushing
understand
them
completely.
over.
Well,
But it's very real.
we're going to put some information on the website about your ministry
Yes,
and
our
about
ministry.
your books.
Thank you. Yes.
And if people want to learn more and to reach out to you, they may have something where they personally want to be healed,
Please. Yeah.
and they want to reach out to you for that,
Mm.
then we'll encourage them to do that. We'll encourage them to do it with us as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
please.
absolutely, we'll make any of ourselves available for that calling and the beauty and the grace of that gift. So, Nigel, thank you.
Thank you.
Blessings on your ministry.
Thank you, sir. It's been a privilege.
It has been. Thank you.